So a lot of people are probably going to go into the new Deadpool wondering, is Disney finally back? Is the MCU saved? They seemingly can't help but keep shooting themselves in the foot. Not really a fan of the multiverse in general. We'll get into that in a sec. But it just seemed like a little bit of a lazy cop-out for writers, so they didn't need to follow continuity rules or anything. They could just write in another universe somewhere. Like, hey, Spider-Man exists off yonder. Like, this is just a different version of Spider-Man. Just something about it just came off lazy and rubbed me the wrong way. I was really interested to watch this final Deadpool and see if they kind of righted some of the wrongs and just where the MCU will go going forward and if I should get back on board the ship. I also figured I'd have to point out a little bit of irony when it comes to this Deadpool movie because the real central plot to this is they have a multiverse angle where they're going back, rescuing Logan. They need to save the central timeline of what's happening. And the irony is, they're doing a lot of commentary on the multiverse and how dumb it is, which I really appreciate, how it hasn't landed at all in the last 5 years. But it is kind of interesting because while they're doing that commentary, the entire build up to the first half of this film really does feel ironic to the message because they're kind of so caught up in themselves in the message and how self-aware Deadpool's humor is, the meta, it really does just kind of take you out of it a little bit. So I had to point out that already that they're kind of getting at the fact that Disney's like overplaying their hand a lot. And I thought the first half of this film really kind of did overplay its hand at points to the point it was just over the top cringy. And I was just kind of over the shtick, kind of waiting for the action to start. But getting into what I actually really liked about this film, starting with the opening scene, which was by far my favorite scene in this film. That's where the movie peaks, in my opinion. A little ironic, I know. But it's just great. He's doing his typical shtick where he's talking to the camera, like breaking the fourth wall. He's trying to find Logan's body because they need to bring Logan back so that they can save the current universe. And it's just the way they do the opening scene is absolutely hilarious and iconic. I was laughing a good 2 or 3 times just in that scene. He's doing this like kill montage to these soldiers to Bye 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 by NSYNC. And what he's doing is he's killing them to the thumps of the beat to Bye Bye Bye, doing like the NSYNC dance. And again, it might be over the top. That's probably going to be your litmus test when you come into this film, whether or not you think that scene's funny, because that sets the tone for the rest of this thing. I was pretty on board because I thought this opening scene was absolutely awesome. How much you like this film, I think, is going to really depend and hinge on whether the jokes land and the tone is right for you. But if the jokes do land for you and you like the Marvel Easter eggs and the jokes they're going for, you might have a blast with this film. It's totally going to depend on that. The second question that anyone probably has before they go into this, is it funny? And I would say, generally speaking, yeah, I actually think it is pretty funny. About 5 or 10 jokes really landed for me. That's not to say it's without faults. I think it's very hammed up comedy, just like the previous Deadpools. But if those were like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, this one's like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 when it comes to the corny jokes, low-hanging fruit, angsty teenage jokes. So be warned about that as well. If that's not your style of humor, this one might be too much for you. A lot of gag jokes about the MCU, Easter eggs, cameos, things like that, where really, neglects plot for humor. So again, the humor needs to land. But fortunately for them, they rapid fire so many jokes into this thing, even though the vast majority of them didn't land for me. The ones that did really landed for me. About 5 or 10 of these, I laughed out loud pretty well. But it is a little interesting for me because Ryan Reynolds is in this. So when the jokes aren't landing, I wonder if that's a product of the writing or how he's delivering them, or if it's just Ryan Reynolds' shtick at this point. Because he's playing himself again as Deadpool. We've seen him in like 10 movies since the last Deadpool, it seems. So I wonder if it's just that his shtick is kind of getting old because he does the same thing in every film he's in. So, when the jokes aren't landing, just something I was thinking about. I'm not sure if it's the writing or if it's just him as a typecast at this point. But yeah, something of note. And as I just said, this movie really doesn't have that much action in the first half, at least. There's some fights between Deadpool and Wolverine, but the vast majority of the action is very backloaded. When you do get it, though, I was satisfied. I thought it was creative enough, the way he's killing, the way the gore is, the effects. It was actually surprisingly bloody and gory, honestly. I knew Wolverine and him would be in this, but if that's not your thing, might be a little bit over the top for you. I personally love it because I love horror movies. So yeah, I was satisfied with the gore and the action when you do get to it. What I think is the biggest issue to this film really is the pacing because it's so backloaded when it comes to the action. The comedy is so heavy-handed, especially in the first half, that when the jokes aren't landing, you really do feel the runtime a little bit at some points because you might go 5 or 10 minutes without laughing. And just the type of humor it is, it's very like you'll cringe out of embarrassment because the jokes didn't land, where it gets really hard at some points where you're kind of waiting for some release, for some action, for a joke to land, and you're just hoping it comes. But the movie is so rapid fire with the jokes. I'm talking 10 jokes in 10 minutes. That when they're not landing, it almost feels like a comedian that's bombing and he's like really trying to work his way out of a hole and get the audience back on his side, but it's just not because you've lost the audience. So that's kind of where it suffers at some points. Again, it never really lost me, but I totally understand how it could lose some people during those moments. Where this film's going to be a major hit and it's going to be a real sell to most people is this movie is balls deep in MCU references, cameos, Easter eggs, poking fun at the multiverse. If you're somebody who's really nerdy and you're into the MCU, you've seen all the films, you know all the problems. This movie has a ton of jokes and commentary about all of those things. Again, I'm kind of outside the loop a little bit after Endgame, but they even make jokes about how, you know, it hasn't sucked since Endgame. They're talking about all of the things we're well aware of. So fans that are in that niche are probably going to get the most out of this and love it the most. And even though I said it's very backloaded when it comes to the action and you have the comedy up front, sometimes it doesn't land. Some of the stuff that lands is great. And my favorite thing in this film overall is the cameos. I thought they were both unexpected and very funny, especially Channing Tatum's character. He has a couple of lines I think are very much laugh out loud funny to the point you're like, what the fuck? Because, you know, you're meeting these characters that are so unexpected. You haven't seen them in ages. You forgot they exist. I mean, you have some characters like Blade. He makes a cameo in here. You have Johnny Storm, which they play up hilariously because you think it's going to be Captain America. And then you have Channing Tatum as Gambit. And as I said, he's hilarious. But more than that, when he's doing his action, he's using his cards and he's doing his stuff, it made me really interested to see a Gambit movie that we didn't get because I know it was teased and it kind of flubbed and it fell through. So yeah, I hope they do a Gambit movie or something. I'm on board with his character because his character was funny. He was very badass. He looked awesome. I just thought his character was honestly kind of stole the show in this thing. I also really liked the villain in this. I thought she was a combination of cool and creepy, and her power was both unique and it looked cool, at least the way the CGI for it worked and the way she entered people's minds. I thought she was really badass. So I thought, you know, she could have got a little bit more screen time, but the time she has, she's also awesome. Aside from those stints where the jokes aren't landing, the only other thing I really minded about this movie and didn't like was what they did with Juggernaut when he makes an appearance. I know he's central to the plot, but they just made him the biggest bitch ever. Like, he undermined my entire childhood, that like X-Men cartoon, if you've ever seen it. Yeah, this guy shows up. He's weak as shit. He's just useless as a character. They need him for the plot. Thought they completely diminished him. That was kind of annoying. The thing being Wolverine, I guess, for a vast majority of the screen time. Again, I know it's his character arc and what they're kind of exploring and what ends up happening. He has very little dialogue. He's kind of just the second fiddle to Deadpool. And he's just an angry drunk. He's kind of annoying. Like, he's pouty everywhere. I mean, I get it. I understand for the plot why they did it, but I just thought it was kind of annoying. Could have had a little bit more entertainment with his character for the vast majority of it. So when it's all said and done, the jokes don't always land, but the ones that do, I think, really do land. About laugh out loud jokes 5 or 10 times. I'll trade that off all day, you know, miss some for some home runs. I'll take it. You know, if you're a fan of the MCU, you're a fan of the Deadpool universe already, you'll probably really like this one. Very heavy on the multiverse, though. Be warned, if you're really not into that side of MCU, maybe you'll enjoy the commentary, the jokes they have, but it is very heavy in the multiverse. That being said, if you like MCU, you like funny movies, you want to go there for a summer blockbuster, you can have a lot of fun with this film. I did. I definitely think you could do worse. So did you guys go see this? If you did, comment down below, let me know what you thought, or let me know what your favorite Deadpool film is. I love the first one, wasn't crazy about the second one. As always, if you haven't subscribed, what the hell are you waiting for? I do it all on this channel. New releases, scary stuff, tier list, all of that stuff. Join me down below, love to have you. That's all I got in this video. Peace.